Yes, dear students, welcome for another session. It is economics. Welcome everyone. So we are going to discuss economics, and this time we are going to economics 2 in the topic of financial institutions. So our topic, it is financial institutions. Again, this topic, it has so many subtopics. Remember, it is the topic which is introducing the role of different financial institutions and other non-financial institutions. It is in this topic where we study the role of different commercial banks in the economy. Particularly in Tanzania, we have different banks like maybe CRDB, we have the NBC, the BOA Bank, the NMB, and the other banks which they are working in the economy. But also we have different non-banking financial institutions like the security schemes and other minor non-banking institutions. Now the aim of this topic, it is aiming to make students to be able to know the role of these financial institutions, to know the role of different commercial banks in the economy, particularly also to understand the working mechanism of the central bank of a given country, particularly for our country, the BOT, the Bank of Tanzania. So it is the topic which is studying all aspects related to financial institutions, ranging from banking financial institutions and non-banking financial institutions. Now our today's discussion will go to a subpart, which is the subtopic here. Subtopic, we are going to discuss the issue of credit creation. Credit creation. So this is the subtopic we're going to discuss, and we're going to make revision for the time being. Now, you can see some review from what we did in the class. When we speak of financial institutions, especially the commercial banks, we said the commercial banks, they are there to perform different financial roles. Now, one of the roles they have to do, it is to create credit. When we say credit, means loans, how they can create credit. Remember, the commercial banks, those I mentioned, like the CRDB, like the NMB, like the NBC, and the other commercial banks, they do not make money. They don't create money. They don't issue money. They are there to bridge between two people. That is, remember in the class we had the two sides. We have the so-called the surplus spending side versus the so-called deficit spending side. So we have these two sides. So the commercial banks, of their cases, as we said, they range from, they have to bridge a gap between the surplus spending side and the deficit spending side. When we say surplus spending, these are those people or those institutes which they have money in excess. They have money in surplus. That means those extra money or those surplus money, they can keep them in different commercial banks. That means if we have individual A has money in excess, for example, has excess of let's say 20 million. This 20 million is in excess. It means this individual A has a lot of money to an extent in his accounts or in his balance, there are excess of 20 millions. But now because this 20 million is extra, it is surplus, then we say that is surplus spending, because out of his spending, total spending, there are excess of this amount of money. On the other hand, if we have this side, which we say deficit spending side, let's say we have individual B here, that is individual B. This individual B has deficit in spending. It means in his expenditure, there is a deficit of money. You want to consume, you want to buy goods and services, you want to use whatever uses you want, but you have deficit. That means the money is not enough. So let's say this person has a deficit of 5 million. 5 millions. That is deficit. It means now this person here, individual A, has deficit, has surplus, while this individual B has a deficit. It means now there is a room for this individual B to borrow money from individual A, because this one has excess, has a surplus, of which it is possible that this individual can give this money or can lend this money to individual B, because individual B is in need of money while this one has excess. But in reality, it is not easy for individual B to meet individual A. Individual A has surplus, individual B has deficit. But this one, I said, can lend this one amount of money. But this one is not easy to meet with this one just personally. So what they have to do, it means between these two people, there is a commercial bank. There is a commercial bank. It means now the role of this commercial bank of any type, it will be used to bring together these two sides, between the surplus spending side and the deficit spending side. It means now this individual B can now go to ask for a loan or can get money to finance the deficit by asking the commercial bank, because the commercial bank has been used now as a bridge between these two sides, where now individual A can take this 20 million which is surplus, then can keep in form of deposit to commercial bank, and this commercial bank now is in a position to lend it out in the form of loan to individual B. So for that case, individual B will get a loan from a bank, but that money is not belonging to the bank, it is belonging to individual A, who had the surplus spending side. Now, due to this process, this is individual A and individual B. We can have individual C and individual D and other people, of whom some they have surplus spending, some they have deficit spending. Then on the way, some they keep money in the bank in form of deposits. Then the commercial banks convert those money to be in form of loan or credit, of which they're going to multiply and form different forms of credit. Now, this process is the one which can facilitate the so-called credit creation. Now, let's go back to our lesson after knowing this item or getting an idea of these items. Now, what is the credit creation? When we say credit creation, we say it's the process where commercial banks advances loans many times greater than their capacity or initial deposit. It means when we speak of credit creation, we speak that process where the commercial banks, as you have mentioned, they can create or can advance loans many times greater than the form of their initial deposit. It means an individual can deposit only 20 million. Then from that 20 million, these commercial banks, they can create more credit from that 20 million, and that money becomes bigger than its initial deposit. Now, when the process it is completed, then we say the commercial banks, they have created credit. Now, in this process, it means the commercial banks, they formulate demand deposits by lending out the deposits, or can say money deposited by surplus spending, so the spending side, to the deficit spending, or can say in bracket borrowers. So it means some they are lenders, some are borrowers. It means now in the process of credit creation, the commercial banks, they are capable to create demand deposits. Demand deposits means to make money available for different customers to withdraw, to get loans, whatever. But by taking money from the surplus spending side, as we have seen in that clarification, then lending that money to the deficit financing or deficit spending side, which are borrowers. So as I said, the commercial banks there maintains deposits or create loans many times by lending money out many times that they can from those initial deposits by the customers. This is when we speak of credit creation. Now, for this process to be complete, there are some terms we can use, terms used. So there are common terms which, when we'll be discussing this subpart, we have to understand, we have to know them. The first term we have to understand, it is the so-called cash reserve ratio. In most time, it is given as R percent. So this is cash reserve ratio. Now, this cash reserve ratio, this is a percentage of customers' deposits which the commercial bank has to retain. Or you can say it is a percentage which a depositor's money, part of which it has to be retained by the commercial bank. It means if an individual deposit a certain money, let's say it deposit 10 million, it means to a certain bank, let's say bank A, it means there is a percentage of this money which should be retained by this bank, then the rest will be lent out. Now, the percentage, which is, it is fixed the percentage, which is indicating how much this bank A should retain from this 10 million, then we say that is cash reserve ratio. Now, for example, this ratio, they can range from maybe 5%, 10%, 20%, depending on the economic situation of the country. So each country can have its own cash reserve ratio, which the commercial banks, they have to work with that particular amount. Remember, this one I said, it is the percentage of customers' deposits which the commercial bank has to retain. Then the remaining, they will be lent out. It means this percentage is not taken out or is not lent out. Then this is what we call as the cash reserve ratio. It is very important to understand this one. But also we have the second term, which we call it as excess reserve. Excess reserve, or we say we can also say legal reserve. Now, to understand this one, the excess reserve, this is the amount which is over and above the required reserve. So we'll see what is required reserve. It means when you say excess reserve, it is the amount of reserve which is in excess beyond what is needed. It means if the bank needs to keep only 10%, the remaining is excess reserve. It means when we say excess reserve will be equals. We take the legal reserve, that one which is legally required, then minus the required reserve. So to get excess reserve, you take legal reserve, then minus the required reserve. Then we say that is the excess reserve. Now, for that case, this is also a terminology which should be known to you. Then the other one, we have the other one which is, we call it as credit multiplier. Credit multiplier, or we call it as sometimes money multiplier. Money multiplier. Now, when we speak of multiplier, most time we are speaking the number of times a certain variable should multiply or should multiply itself to make a certain total outcome. Now, when we say credit multiplier, it is the number of times an initial deposit by a customer has to multiply in order to get total deposits. It means the number of times the initial deposit has to multiply itself in order to get a certain total deposit. Then that number of times, it is called as credit creation multiplier. Now, in most time we say a credit multiplier, that is credit multiplier, or can say credit multiplier in terms of this one, will be equals to, we take 1 over the R. Remember we said the R represents the cash reserve ratio. Now, if we take 1 over R, which is the cash reserve ratio, we get the credit creation multiplier. Now, for example, if in the economy, maybe the bank maintains 20%. Let's say this is an example. If in the economy, the cash, e.g., if the cash ratio of the economy, it is 20%. How do we get the credit creation multiplier? We said because it means the solution here, our R equals to 20%. So it means to get credit creation multiplier, we said credit multiplier will be equals to 1 over R. But our R is 20%, and 20% is the same as 0.2. So it will be equals to 1 over 0.2. If we multiply, you'll get equals to 5 times. It means in this economy, for initial deposit to get total deposit, it means each initial deposit you multiply 5 times to get the total deposit. This is for this case. Now, having seen these some of the terms which are used in credit creation, let's see the assumptions of credit creation. Assumptions of credit creation. Now, for credit creation to take place and to get the required outcome, the following assumptions should be maintained. Number 1, it is assumed that there are many banks in the economy. Now, for credit creation multiplier to operate, or for credit creation to operate, we assume that the economy of that country or the economy of that society must involve several banks, not one bank, at least many banks, so that the movement of money can be easily moving from one bank to another bank. That individuals, they can borrow money from bank A, deposit them in bank B, take from bank B into bank C, take C to bank D. So there should be many banks so that credit creation can be created as many times as possible if there are many banks. So this is one of the assumptions. The second assumption, it is assumed that there is, number 2, there is no hoarding of money. What do we mean? It means all money which individuals are getting in the form of loan from one bank to another bank, there should be no hoarding or hiding of them, taken out of the system. It means all money borrowed from one bank, they should be deposited in somebody's account or someone's account. So it means no hoarding of money in the economy. Then number 3, the banks maintains a fixed cash reserve ratio. It means in the economy, if we have 10 banks, if we have 5 banks, we have 3 banks, all banks, they should be working in the mechanism that there is a fixed cash reserve ratio. Remember I said cash reserve ratio is the percentage of customers' initial deposit which the bank has to maintain or has to retain. It means that money from the cash ratio is not lent out. Now, for that case, all banks in that given economy, they should be working in a fixed cash reserve ratio. So this is one of the assumption. Another assumption money taken from one bank is deposited in full into another bank. It means the money which is taken or which is drawn from one bank, and that money is drawn in the form of loan. It means we have 3 banks, Bank A, Bank B, Bank C. It means if an individual takes, let's say, 8 million from this bank, we expect all of it to be deposited 8 million here. Now, if this bank takes its percentage, the remaining, let's say, 6 million given to another individual should be taken in full to another bank. That is the meaning. It means this money which is going to be taken from one bank should be deposited in full in the next bank. Then the next bank keeps its cash ratio or takes the percentage which is required. Then the remaining also deposited to the next bank. So it means that is bank or money taken from one bank is deposited full in the other bank. That is another assumption. Then number 5 assumption, we say there is higher willingness of people to borrow money from the banks. It means here now we speak of the willingness of individuals. It means the willingness of individuals to borrow money from the bank, to ask for credit from the bank is very high, because if there is no willingness of these individuals in that economy to borrow money from the bank, then there is a credit creation will not work, because there might be money in the bank where the surplus spending side they have kept in the bank, but no individuals, no willingness for other individuals, the deficit spending side, to borrow those money from the bank. So for that case, that initial deposit cannot multiply many times to create more credit, because the willingness of individuals to borrow money from the bank is not there. So for credit creation to operate or to be successful, then the willingness of people to borrow money from the bank should be higher. So these are some of the assumptions which the credit creation is working under them. Now, when we see these assumptions, it means credit creation can operate smoothly when these assumptions they operate. Now, let's just try to check if we note something here. If the economy has several banks, that means economy has several banks, and let's say an individual has deposited 1 million in the first bank, and the banks maintains a cash ratio of 20%. Now let's that is 20%. So it means our economy, it has several banks, and one individual has deposited 1 million in the first bank, and the banks maintains a cash ratio of 20%. Let's see what will be happening to these banks before we see one example there. This is just clarification on how, by using something like a chart, which will be showing how these banks may work out with these 1 million. But the bank maintains cash ratio of 20%. Now let's try to see. We have the bank, we have Bank A, we have Bank B, we have C, probably, and let's say D, and there will be many other banks. Now, in the first case for all of these banks, this case will be having deposits or initial deposits deposits. After that deposits, we'll be having the so-called reserve, the required reserves. Then will be new deposits, of which these ones will be like in form of like loans, which will be given out, loans, new deposits. Now try to check. It means you said this individual has deposited 1 million. It means the first bank is maybe bank A, where now this individual has deposited 1 million. It's this one, 1 million. It means this bank has to retain 20% of the deposited money, because that's the principle, as we said. Now 20% of this money is 200. So the reserve here will be 200,000. That will be the reserve from 1 million. It means if we take that money deposited by individual, now it is 1 million, but this bank, Bank A, has to retain 20% of this 1 million. It means the retained money here, it will be 200,000. For that case, the new deposits which have to move to another bank, it will be 800,000. So it means this 800,000 will be taken into the next bank. It means now here the next bank, which is Bank B, the initial deposit, it will be 800,000. That will be deposited in that bank. Again, for reserve, this Bank B, it has also to maintain 20%, because that is common, 20%. So you calculate 20% of this one, you get 20% here, it will be 160,000, something like. If we calculate, we can use calculator to support us. So it will be 100,000 and this one. If we take this minus this, it means the new deposit here, which will be moving to another bank, it will be like how much? If we take this minus this, you'll get 640,000. This one. I think now this money again, it will be taken to Bank C. So the Bank C will also receive initial deposit of this money. It has to maintain 20% of this one. So 20% of this one, which is 0.2 times that money, you'll get, sorry, 0.2 times the, you'll get, it will maintain this amount, 128,000 will be retained by the bank. It means if we take this minus this, so we take the answer minus what we used, we will get this amount here. It will be remaining 512,000. It means now this amount of money here, it will be taken to Bank C, to Bank D, all of it. So it is moving to Bank D. So Bank D will receive, this is Bank D. So this money here is taken, now moving to Bank D. So Bank D will receive this amount. Again, it has to maintain 20% of this one. So here, the reserve will be maintained by this bank. It is 20%. So you calculate 20% of this one, 0.2 times that one equals to this one, 400. This one. So it means again here, the amount created, it is the difference of the two, where the difference of the two will give you, that is this one minus we'll get 4, this one 600. So it means this one will proceed if there are other banks, E, F, etc., etc., etc. So this is how credit creation can work in the economy. So having seen these three, so you can see from bank A, the initial deposit was this one. So if you add the deposit, you'll find they are many than the initial. If you add even these reserves, you find they'll go on increasing as the number of banks increases. That's why we said credit creation is the number of times initial deposit can multiply itself to give you total deposit. Now for that case, you can see as banks increases, you'll find the ability of this economy to create more credit will be greater because there are many banks in the economy. And this is the operation of credit creation. Now, having seen this part, we have to check the example. We have example here. We have to check. We have an example where we can check how to go through this example. So try to check from your screen. You can see the example. We want to do it together. We have to do that example together. Now, you can observe there from the example is stating a customer makes an initial deposit of 1 million in CRDB Bank, where the cash reserve ratio is 10%. So, a customer has deposited 1 million in CRDB Bank, where the cash reserve ratio is 10%. Now, assuming that there are other banks, NMB, NBC, and BOA in the economy. Number one, show how the process of credit creation will work. That is number one. So we assume that out of CRDB Bank, where the first initial deposit was made, again, we can have other banks, which is NMB, NBC, and BOA Bank. Now, for that case, we have 4 banks. Now, the first party show how the process of credit creation will work. Then number 2, calculate credit multiplier. We have seen how to calculate it. Then number 3, determine the total deposits. We are going to do it. And number 4, calculate the total loans created. Number 5, calculate the total reserve made. And B, assuming that the number of banks in the economy is not known, calculate the total credit created in the economy. So it means in part B, we assume that there is infinity number of banks. They are not known. Then how are we going to get the total credit created? Now, come with me to solve this question. Now, while we keep on observing there, question number 1, it is show how the process of credit creation can work in this question. And we say there are 4 banks. The second part or column may stand for new, or can say deposits or initial deposits in each bank. Then the second part can stand for reserves, which they are created, and the other part will stand for loans created. So that is how it may work. So we'll be having new deposits, reserves, and the loans created. So remember, we have 4 banks. In this case, we have 4 banks. We have 4 banks. Now we say the first bank where the initial deposit was made, it is CRDB. So we have CRDB Bank, it is there. Then the second bank, you can use any, but there is NMB. Then we have NBC. Then we have BOA. So these are the banks which will be involved. Now this customer has deposited 1 million. So it means CRDB received the initial deposit or new deposits of 1 million from this customer. And remember, we said this bank, they maintain 10%. It means now the bank, CRDB, has to keep 10% of 1 million. 10% of 1 million is 100,000. That will be as a reserve. This will be retained by the bank. It means the remaining will be lent out. Now it means in terms of loan or credit, here you can also say credit created. It means now CRDB will be in a position now to lend out 900,000. 900,000. That one will be taken out. Now, as we said in the principle of credit creation, when a customer takes money from this bank, it has to deposit in full to the next bank. So this customer has to take the 900,000 and deposit it in full in the next bank. So the initial deposit for NMB will be 900,000. Again, NMB, they have to keep 10% of these deposits as their reserve. So they will keep 10%. 10% of this one is 90,000, something like 10% of this. Now, if we take the difference, it means out of 900,000, 10% of it is kept. Now they have to create the remaining will be lent out. So lending out means we take this minus this, where we'll get, I think it is 8,000. You can use calculator so that we don't mislead there. We have 900,000 minus, so we'll get this one. So it means this, NMB will be capable to lend out 810,000, which will be taken as loan. So it means, again, the customer who takes this money is going to deposit it in full to the next bank. The next bank, it is NBC. So NBC will receive 810,000. This as initial deposit. It has also to maintain 10%. 10% of this one is 81,000, which will be retained. Now the remaining again will be lent out. Now for that case, we have 81,000 minus 81,000, where you get 729,000. Now this money will also be a credit which will be given by NBC. Now a customer who will take this money, we assume, has to take it in full and deposit to the next bank, which is now BOA. So BOA will receive initial deposit of this one. Again, they have to maintain 10%, which will be 72,900, something like that one. Then the remaining will also be a credit. So we take again 72,900. This one will less 72,900. We get 65,600. So this is the first part. It means now in the first part we have seen how credit creation will take place. So this table, it is indicating how credit creation will take place when there are these four banks: CRDB, NMB, NBC, and BOA Bank. Now, having seen, we go to the second part, which is asking, determine the total, calculate the credit multipliers. So the second part, which is this one, it is asking calculate credit multiplier. Then we said credit multiplier equals to 1 over R. Now from the question, the R we have there equals to 10%. So it means our credit creation multiplier will be equals to 1 over 10%, which is the same as 1 over 0.1. It will give you 10 times. So it means our credit creation multiplier here, it is 10 times. It means all initial deposits should multiply 10 times to create total credit. That is the idea. Now we go to the third part. The third part, it is asking determine the total deposits. Now the total deposits, remember, deposits are these ones. Now the total deposits, it means we have to add in the four banks. These are the deposits. So our deposits here will be total deposits will be equals to the first bank, there is 1 million, plus the deposit in the second bank, it is 900,000, plus in the third bank there is this one, and in the fourth bank there is 72,900. So when we add those, we get the total deposit. Now we add there, we can get 1 million plus 900,000 plus you get, it is 3 million for 3,900. That is the total deposit created by these to banks. So you can find from 1 million, which was deposited by the first customer. Now they have deposited the total of 3,439,000 in the economy. Then part 4, it is asking, calculate the total loans created. So again, we go to the column of the total loans. Total loans are here. So it means these are the total loans which will be created. So it means the total loans for these 4 banks, we add the loans created, which will be 900,000 plus 65, 100. So if we add all of these, we get the total loan created. Now we can use calculators to get the total loan there, where you can get 900,000 plus 810,000 plus 9,000 plus you get 3,095,100. This is the total loans created, or the total credit created. And the last part, number 5, it is asking, calculate the total reserves made. So it means total reserves, we add all of the reserves. Our reserves are here. So we add all the reserves, which will be including 100,000 plus 90,000 plus 81,000 plus 72,900. This will give you this one. This is total reserves made. So you can find, even in terms of reserves, they keep on increasing as number of bank increases. So this is for the first, for part A. Then part B it is asking, so we solve part B. Part B, it is asking, assuming that the number of banks in the economy is not known, calculate the total credit created in the economy. So in this question, part B, we have to assume that the number of banks is not known. Remember, in the first case, we assumed that there are 4 banks which were given there. We had CRDB, we had NMB, NBC, and BOA. But in the second case, we have been told to assume that in the economy, the number of banks are not known. We don't know how many banks are there. Then calculate the number of the total credit created. Now, if we have been asked to calculate total credit, and the number of banks is not known, whether they are 4 or they are 10 or they are 100, to get total credit when the number of banks is infinity, is not known, we have to use this formula. So part B, it will be to get credit created, will be equals to initial deposits times credit creation multiplier. That is the formula. So our formula to get total amount of credit created when the number of banks is not known. We don't know how many banks are there. Maybe they are 20, they are 15, but we are not sure. To get the total credit created, we take the initial deposit by the first customer to the first bank times the credit creation multiplier. Now, in our case, our initial deposit there, it was 1 million. That was initial deposit. Then we said our credit creation, it is 10 times. So if we multiply, we get 10 millions. So it means our total credit creation, if the number of banks is not known, we'll get 10 million. So total credit created will be equals to 10 million. That is the answer for this case. Now, having seen this one, we may be in the position to calculate this form of these questions at your own time, of which you may revise in different books and different areas. At your own time, you can try to check the limitations or problems which the economy may face in credit creation. So limitations or problems which may face credit creation. So you can go and pass in different books or in different sources to get those problems which different banks they can face when they create credit. Especially in LODCs, we have these problems, including having very few banks which they are operating in the economy, but also having people they have poor banking habit. That most of the people they don't have habit of keeping money in the bank. So that one is limiting credit creation, because we need customers who will be capable to keep money in form of deposit, so that the bank can be capable to lend those money to other people. But in developing countries, it is a problem. So go and check those other problems or limitations which they face the process of credit creation in developing countries, including Tanzania. So this is the end of our session. We prepare for the other lesson and have a good time.